Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. New reporting shows President Trump personally asked intelligence chief Tulsi Gabbard to be present at the FBI's Georgia election-related search. The disclosure is fueling legal and political questions about executive involvement in investigative actions. Federal officials made new immigration and budget announcements in a fast-moving White House briefing cycle on Wednesday. Agencies said additional enforcement actions and legal fights are expected in the coming days. Trump's team is trying to reframe its immigration push as a public safety message after backlash over aggressive tactics. Advisors say the strategy targets suburban voters uneasy with both border chaos and hardline enforcement. The White House rolled out a prescription drug pricing plan branded Trump Rx, aiming to lower costs for common medications. Health policy analysts said the impact will depend on implementation rules and negotiations with manufacturers. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass selected billionaire education leader Austin Beutner as deputy mayor to oversee city operations and reform work. The appointment comes as City Hall faces budget strain and public safety scrutiny. A federal judge in Oregon barred immigration agents from making warrantless arrests in parts of the state. The order requires stronger legal justification before detentions and sets up a broader court fight. President Trump said he wants talks with Russia on a new nuclear arms framework as key limits near expiration. Officials said no deal is close, but both sides signaled interest in further discussions. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. Senate Democrats demanded stricter rules on ICE arrests and use of force before backing a long-term DHS budget. Republicans rejected most proposals, making a Homeland Security funding lapse on February 14th more likely. The White House said it could not guarantee ICE agents would stay away from polling places this November. The response came after calls from Trump allies to deploy immigration enforcement around election sites. New Jersey Democrats voted in a crowded special primary to replace Mickey Sherrill in the 11th District. The winner advances to an April special election against Republican Randolph Mayor Joe Hathaway. The D.C. Council approved tax changes that adjust rates and brackets as the city confronts budget pressure. Officials said the package aims to stabilize revenue while limiting the hit on most residents. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent clashed with Senator Elizabeth Warren at a contentious Capitol Hill hearing over economic oversight and financial policy. The exchange highlighted growing pressure on the administration's fiscal and regulatory agenda. Trump's deportation push is reshaping suburban New York politics as both parties recalibrate messaging on enforcement and public safety. Local races are becoming early tests of voter reaction ahead of 2026. President Trump said the U.S. is in talks with Cuba's leadership after threatening measures that could tighten pressure on the island's oil supply. Cuban officials say sovereignty and sanctions relief remain central. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. A CNN review said newly released Epstein files exposed victim-identifying details while leaving questions about possible enablers. The Justice Department said it is rechecking redactions as lawmakers demand fuller disclosure. Virginia Governor's Abigail Spanberger ended State 287G, agreements that tied local agencies to federal immigration enforcement. Her order shifts state resources toward local policing priorities rather than federal civil immigration work. Virginia's redistricting case is moving toward a high-stakes ruling that could reshape congressional maps before the midterms. State courts are weighing competing plans that could affect both parties' 2026 strategy. At the White House on Thursday, officials said immigration enforcement and DHS funding talks remained unresolved as Congress neared key deadlines. The briefing underscored continued legal battles over raids, detention standards, and federal authority. The D.C. Council approved tax changes to address budget gaps and stabilize city revenue. Officials said the package balances new revenue with protections aimed at limiting the burden on most residents. Trump's deportation push is reshaping suburban politics in New York as both parties adjust messaging on crime and immigration. Local races are becoming an early test of voter reaction ahead of 2026. A federal judge in Oregon barred immigration agents from making warrantless arrests in the state under the challenge policy. The order requires stronger legal grounds for detentions while the case moves forward. A new national poll highlighted weak ratings for DHS Secretary Kristi Noem amid backlash over recent ICE operations. The numbers add pressure on the administration as oversight fights and court challenges continue. The Trump administration signaled interest in renewed U.S.-Cuba talks while keeping pressure tools on the table. Cuban officials said sanctions relief and sovereignty issues remain central to any progress.